Local webcasting for a worldwide audience.
Hello, you're listening to Radio Lewis, where the music matters. My name's Steve Brooks, and this is Vapour Trails.
I bet you they won't play this song on the radio. I bet you they won't play this new song. It's not that it's or controversial, just that the ing words are awfully strong. You can't say on the radio or you can't even say I'd like to you someday, unless you're a doctor with a very large. So I bet you they won't play this song on the radio. I bet you they dare well program it. I bet you their old program directors will think it's a load of horse.
Yeah, and welcome back to Vapour Trails. Vapour Trails 45. We're at a right angle, I believe. So yeah, the first up there was Monty Python, and I bet they won't play this song on the... Well, we did. So there you go. And after that was Are You Experienced by Belly. And that was from a tribute album to Jimi Hendrix Stone 3, which came out in 1993. And both these are selected by my guest today, Tony Keane.
Hi, Steve.
How are you doing, mate?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Good of you to come down, I must say.
Yeah.
So Tony's one of the carers and sharers that we have, and usually sends in a request. I sometimes even play them. but yeah, I mean, this is the thing. If anyone wants to come in and go through a playlist that they're choosing, that's absolutely fine. So, Tony, looking down, this is a brilliant playlist.
Yeah, I mean, the tone of the playlist is kind of sort of set by that first song, which is the sort of the theme song, which is I Bet You They Won't Play This Song on the Radio. It's all tracks that you just don't hear on the radio anymore, because radio can be so restrictive. You know, you can reduce somebody like the Kinks down to just 6 singles.
Yeah.
And this came about because I did a request a few shows back for, I gave you a lot of selections, and you said,
usually,
I'll go for Belly because nobody ever plays Belly.
Right.
If I ever had my own radio show, I'd do a radio show which is just completely things that nobody ever plays.
And this is it. Yeah, brilliant. No, it's a great idea. And it's kind of one of the things I do try and do with Vapour Tracks is kind of throw in stuff not really recognised from It's like, say, with the Kinks and stuff, you know, they've got a huge back catalogue. And and I think even listening to things like Radio 6, you'd have the same 2 or 3 songs by the same people over and over again.
You kind of do a lot, yeah,
despite what they say. So anyway, next up, one of my favourites. Yes?
Yeah, again, one of my requests that you played a bit ago was a track by the Style Council, and I thought, nobody ever really plays the Style Council. No. You get the jam, you get Weller's solo stuff, but there's this gap in the middle of his career that's just disappeared. And there are kind of, I think, a lot of reasons for that. People didn't react very well to the Style Council. No. And I think that's partly because they did come across as being quite pretentious. Yeah. And, you know, Weller had a series of very ill-advised haircuts throughout.
He did, yeah. And I think the Gauloises put people off as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people were cross that it wasn't the Jam Part 2. Yeah. And I think Weller had been trying to get away from that sort of mod punk straight jacket.
Yeah, sure.
Particularly towards the end of it. And he's got a lot of soul influence in the last Jam album, and a lot more of that comes out in the Style Council, but there's also a lot of jazz comes into the Style Council. There's bits and bobs of English music hall that come into the Style Council, as we'll hear in a moment. And I also think the Jam had been a political band, but the Style Council really, really are a political band. Absolutely avert and naming names all the way through.
Yeah, I think a track dropping bombs on the White House probably does actually lend itself to that.
And for anybody who does play the Style Council now, including when Weller plays the Style Council, it's the happy songs. It's things like My Ever-Changing Moods or You're the Best Things. He doesn't really play the political stuff, which is a shame, because we could really do with Weller going out and doing all his political songs right now.
Yeah, I reckon another 12-minute version of Money Go Round would be brilliant, actually,
And I think it's such a shame, because that second Style Council album, Our Favourite Shop, is a really, really brilliant album. As the Enemy actually said at the time, it's the point at which his political vision and his musical vision really come together. And it was really difficult to actually pick a track from that for this, and I was sort of going all over the place, but eventually I settled on one of the singles off the album, which is Come to Milton Keynes.
I'll probably cut my bit out, but do like the ending of that. So, yeah. Style Council and come to Milton Keynes. And then from Milton Keynes to Camden.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to do on this was play at least a couple of tracks that almost nobody listening will have actually ever heard.
Right, yeah.
Possibly even by bands that you haven't heard of. This is a band called Linus, who were sort of part of the Brighton queer scene in the early 1990s.
Oh, right,
and queer riot girl scene. They almost made it. They'd had an album out. They'd done Radio 1 sessions. Right. And then Britpop comes along and it's size 16 Doc Martens and stomps all over anything that's remotely interesting. And ironically, that's just at the point at which Linus's command of the pop melody becomes absolutely exquisite. I think this track, Lovers of London, from their 2000 album Good Listener, I think really shows that.
Oh, lovers of London, you better not close your eyes. Oh, lovers of London, you better say your goodbyes. And still I go to look for tracks in secret streets. I wander down to disappear between the cracks of our vacant-hearted town. And you know, like I know that we can't go out alone. But we go, 'cause we know it's no fun to stay at home. Oh, lovers of London, you better not close your eyes. Oh, lovers of London, you better say your goodbyes. Go out tonight and join the faces, 1,000 more you'll never meet. But when I go, I'll leave a trace in the memory of the street. And you know, like I know that we can't go out alone. But we go, 'cause we know it's no fun to stay at home. And when I think I won't be missed, I feel as if I don't exist. I walk the alleys only I can see, and in my invisibility, every building belongs to me. I like your style. I like your style. I like your I know there's something you're holding back. Face to the pavement, fall through the crack. Lights on the west wing, burning to black.
That's blooming brilliant.
It's lovely, and the album's chock full of stuff like that.
Right, yeah.
Unfortunately, it's a sad story. They broke up about 15 years ago now, slightly less than 15 years ago, because Andy, the guitarist and main songwriter, got killed in a road accident, and the other guys just didn't have the heart to carry on. So, I mean, I still see Debs, the bass player, around, and she's still doing things from time to time.
Yeah.
But I've got another band that I was seeing a lot at that time in Camden, is this next band, Spy 51. And I should say, I'm going to dedicate the Linus track to my friend Charlie Stone, who was a good mate of Andy Robert. And Andy's actually playing guitar on this next track.
You said things I shouldn't say. Saying what you want is a bad thing. Doing what you like is a sad thing. So I think I'll go my way. All the time you think I'm a loser, when it's just that you're a bad chooser. I found silly things that do not get me down. I found silly things that do not get me down. We all fancy Sheila's sister. I would give her one any day now. It's a real shame she's not gay now. So I think I'll go my way. All the time you think I'm a loser, when it's just that you're a bad chooser. I found silly things that do not get me down.
Spy 51, and I'd like to dedicate that to Lee Andrews, who was the bass player, lead singer and main songwriter of Spy 51. Spy 51 splitting up's much less tragic story. I don't know what happened to the drummer Toby, but Lee basically went off into motherhood and works in schools, and she's actually now drumming in an all-girl folk band.
Right. I did see online that there was it a solo album of hers? There is something.
I think that the things that Charlie, on the other hand, is really doing very, very well. I mean, she back in the 90s, she sort of forged a bit of a career as being additional live guitarist for various bands. So she was additional live guitarist for Salad. And they were going to make her a full-time member of the band, but they split up instead. And then she was additional live guitarist for Gay Dad. And they did make her a full-time member of the band, but then she split from them before she ever actually got to go into a studio with them, I think.
Yeah. But now I was going to mention. I just stopped you there because I was just going to mention that your Britpop comic probably meant that Mild-Mannered Max would disown us and never retweet the show again. But then you mentioned Salad, which is his all-time favourite band. So there you go. So, well done.
Salad, I once described Salad as being Britpop if Edward Gorey had written the lyrics. The Salad fan site, which I think is probably run by Marina, then came back and said, "Oh, I love that." But now Charlie is doing Great Gun. She's back in Salad, reformed.
Yeah, I saw that.
And as a full-time member, she's also being additional live guitarist for Desperate Journalist, and I'll be seeing her in that on Sunday night, in fact. And she's in loads of other bands. She was in Joanne Joanne, the all-female Joanne Joanne tribute band.
Right.
She's in The Fallen Women, which is an all-female fall karaoke tribute band.
My lord.
Where basically the band stays the same all the way through the gig, but the Marquis Smith changes every time.
That's a marvellous take on it, really.
It's
on the reality.
Absolutely brilliant. I've done that a couple of times. It's really, really great deal of fun. So, moving on, I guess, before I talk up all the time we've got left. The next thing I wanted to select is going back to the 1980s, and The Mighty Wah's Hope I Wish You'd Believe Me. Whenever Mighty Wah gets played, it'll be The Story of the Blues.
Yeah.
Or it might be Come Back. Never hear this on the radio, and yet it's such a majestic stuff. I mean, I can almost imagine Pete Wiley sitting in Liverpool, in Merseyside, in the early 80s, saying, "Well, if you like Story of the Blues, you're going to love this."
Yeah.
And nobody did.
It is very strange, isn't it?
I don't understand why nobody bought this, because it is such a magnificent record.
Didn't understand a thing or two, but now I see with my own two eyes. The problem was all right down to you. Now I wake up every day, think about things you said when you used to love me. It made sense, but every time I
Okay, so that was The Mighty Wah and Hope, I Wish You'd Believe. That's brilliant, wasn't it, as well? Another great one. Yeah. Anyway, what's up next?
What's up next is a track off a Beatles album, and people may be thinking, how could there be an obscure track off a Beatles album? People who know me may be a bit worried I'm going to make you listen to all 8 minutes of Revolution Number 9 now, which I'm not.
I'm sure you've requested that in the past.
I may do it in the future. It's not actually a Beatles track at all. It's a track by the George Martin Orchestra. When the Beatles put out the Yellow Submarine film, they only actually recorded 4 new tracks for that album. And that's how, with a couple of extra things, it's only really enough for one side. Now, they could have put out an album with all the other Beatles tracks that they've used in the movie, which is what Apple eventually did in the 90s with the Yellow Submarine Songbook. But the Beatles didn't like doing that because they thought it wasn't value for money to make their fans buy tracks over and over again.
Yeah,
so
they were very good at that, kind of doing singles.
That's why hardly any Beatles singles are actually on albums.
Exactly. Which is why, just going back to the Jam, that's what they did. That was one thing I really loved about the Jam, was the fact that they had singles like that. Anyway, they used a trick that had been used in America for the Hard Day's Night and Help albums, of having a side of the soundtrack music. Right.
And so there's a whole side of George Martin's soundtrack music. And of course, the critics just ignore that. They just give it one line and they're not interested. And for the last 10 years, I've come to realise that actually this is really good stuff. And I listened to side 2 of Yellow Submarine much more than I listened to side 1. And I think we celebrate George Martin as this brilliant producer, and rightly so, but we don't celebrate him as a composer. No. And he's really, really good.
Yeah.
He's the first person other than John Barry to do a James Bond soundtrack, because he does Live and Let Die.
Right.
And that I think is the only soundtrack that holds a candle to what Barry does until David Arnold comes along in the 1990s. And again, we don't hear that. Although, curiously, a couple of weeks ago, I did actually hear one of George Martin's orchestral pieces on Classic FM.
Oh, right.
And Classic FM is not a station you generally go to hear something that you've never heard before.
Exactly.
And so maybe George we're starting to actually celebrate Martin as a composer. But anyway, listen to Pepperland and see what you think.
show. I was a blooming flower, blossoming from the seed. And I was a blooming flower, turned my back and turned to. Dandelion, dandelion, souls of you and me. How can you smell so bad but look so pretty? And I was a blooming flower, blossoming from the seed. And I was a blooming flower, turned my back. And I was a blooming flower, blossoming from the seed. And I was a blooming flower, turned my back and turned to, turn my back and turned to, turn my back and turned to weed.
I would like to dedicate Pepperland by the George Martin Orchestra to...
I'll stop that there. Sorry about that. Do carry on, Tony. Yeah,
Right.
sorry.
I'd like to dedicate Pepperland, George Martin Orchestra, to my mate David Woolscroft, who's an even bigger Beatles fan than I am. And that track, Tracy Bonham's Dandelion off the Liverpool Sessions EP, I'd like to dedicate to Steve Mowbray, because it was Steve's copy that I first heard that on.
Yeah, and a nice bit of Liverpool link-ups there for you, yes, in your Radio 2 DJ Styling. So,
God, I hope not.
So we're coming up to the next one, and I just like your little comment on this, because the next one's Alan Price, and she's like, Price used to be everywhere, and yeah, he was.
He was. And he had all these hit singles, like with sort of Don't Stop the Carnival and Simon Smith and His Amazing Dancing Bear. Do you hear those on the radio anymore? No, you just don't.
He was on every episode of the Two Ronnies, I think.
Yeah.
Him and Barbara Dixon probably had to get...
Again, it's a film soundtrack thing. So he did the soundtrack for Lindsay Anderson's Oh Lucky Man, and this is the opening track to that I want to hear now. And I want to dedicate this to my old mate Mark Davis, who, as school children, I had been sent to bed midway through Oh Lucky Man and had not seen the end of it. And Mark then very generously spent an afternoon telling me what had happened to the rest of the movie.
Did the same thing happen with this? Probably wouldn't get through the first few minutes of it.
If you have a friend on whom you think you can rely, you are a lucky man. If you found the reason to live on and not to die, you are a lucky man. Preachers and poets and scholars don't know it. Temples and statues and steeples won't show it. If you've got the secret, just try not to blow it. Stay a lucky man. A lucky man. If you found the meaning of the truth in this whole world, you are a lucky man. If knowledge hangs around your neck like pearls instead of chains, you are a lucky man. Takers and fakers and talkers won't tell you. Teachers and preachers will just buy and sell you. When no one can tempt you with heaven or hell, you be a lucky man. man.
OMG. It's Vapour Trails on Radio Lewis.
For sure and actual. You swear by all that's factual. Insane, elastic joy to spare. Big as dancing bebop. Take me away from the drop. I cannot help but stand and stare. Sonics, Casanovas. I'm dying to take over. Lipstick on bangle, it's a deal. 10 stinking lies, cheap shot and shifty eyes. Double the price you gotta steal. Hating us, hating us. Wants us all so bad. Hope it drives her mad. Holy rolling thinkers, knee jerks and lovesick drinkers. I follow each other through the haze. Swapping tales of woe, ozone and G.I. Joe. They can, they do, and guess who pays? Hating us, hating us. Wants us all so bad. Hope it drives her mad. Time to spit it out, wash it down the spout. You don't have to kiss because you pout. All those high hopes locked up inside. Let 'em out, chalked outside. Hating us, wants us all so bad. Hope it drives them mad. Hating us, wants us all so bad. Hope it drives them
Oh yes, that's the stuff, Tony. Bit of that petrol.
Yeah, I mean, you do hear that petrol emotion on the radio, but only on Vapour Trails. You're the only person I
Thank you
ever
very
heard
much.
play
Yes,
it.
thank you very much indeed. Yes. Well, yeah, it is surprising. You know, we were just saying for a band that their output was just so good.
Yeah, and they got ex-members of the Undertones in it, and they just get ignored. But so I mean, that one I want to dedicate. There's only one person I can dedicate that to, which is I believe it's a friend of the show, as you say, DJ Land.
Yes, that's the vernacular we use. Yes.
Phil Dyson.
Yeah.
This one's for you, Phil.
Yeah, he'd be very chuffed with that. And actually, I noticed next up, you've got another one of my all-time favourites.
Really?
And I was looking at this because I did actually buy this on 12-inch.
As did I.
Yeah, it's like, again, just disappeared off the ends of the earth, really. But
Rocking with Rita and the Beach 12-inch Beach Party off the Vindaloo Summer Special. And if you look on Spotify, you find this credited to We've Got a Fuzzbox and We're going to use it. But actually, it's not a Fuzzbox track, really. It's the Nightingales playing a Ted Chippington song.
Yeah.
With a bit of guesswork from Ted Chippington. And all the Fuzzbox people and girls are doing is doing odd bit of backing vocal, but doing it really well, actually.
Yeah, it is. Because I remember back then seeing Ted Chippington live quite a bit. He used to turn up a hell of a lot with the Redskins, and he once opened for them once and got pelted with coins, which was a shame, because he used to come on just to he's like how far to the station? 1 mile. How far to the station? 1 mile. How far to the station? 1 mile, roughly speaking. So he would get pelted with coins, and then, bless him, he picked them up all at the end and handed them back. Which was just amazing. But
I still love I'm in a dilemma. Yeah, good motors, them dilemmas.
It was brilliant. Yeah, there's even a little Ted Chippington joke at the end of this about crisp as well. Yeah. So anyway, let's put it on. This is Rocking with Rita.
Spotter rocking, I reckon, Ted. Okay, well, I think I'll get me rocking shoes on. Ooh, smart pair. Oh, careful you don't tread on them. I'll try my best, mate. Okay, here we go now. Rocking with Rita, head to toe. Rocking with Vera, head to toe. Rocking with Donna, head to toe. Rocking with Rita, you sure can't beat her, oh no. With Elvis, rocking with Charlie Feathers,
Rocking with Jerry Lee.
You sure can't beat rocking with Jerry Lee, you know. Oh no, and from your head to your toe. Rocking with Ron Collins, head to toe. Rocking with Maria, head to toe. Rocking with Howie. You sure can't beat rocking with the tank, so hatchback rocking now tank. With your best mates, you know, you just can't beat it. Oh no, I reckon it's okay. Not too bad, really. No. Here we go. Oh no. Rocking with Vicky, rocking with Maggie, rocking with Joe, rocking with Tina. You sure can't beat her. Oh no. Shake it from your head to your toe. Rocking with Paul Daniel. That's a lot. Rocking with Lena Martel. Rocking with Rita. You sure can't beat her. Oh no. Oh no. Come on, Rita. Daniel, let's go. Ted, I'm fed up with this dry throat. Yeah, my knees are beginning to ache as well.
Oh, baby.
There you go, Ted. Have yourself a bit of a breather.
Cheers, Chief. You know, these youngsters, they sure know how to shake it up.
Just goes to show, you're never too young to rock and roll.
You're never too old either.
What about doing twists then?
No thanks, mate. I don't like crisps. Oh no.
Oh, that took me back, Tony. It really did. When was that? 86, was it?
Something like that, yeah. So, I'd like to dedicate that to my mate Garnet Hampson, who's a big Ted Chippington fan back in the day.
I was going to say, could I also can dedicate that to Ali B as well, who actually reminds me of every single member of We've Got a Fuzzbox at different points of time. It's quite something. But
is that a compliment? Or
it's a compliment.
Yeah, you can edit that bit out. Yeah.
Okay, what's next, Tony?
Well, there's a couple of tracks with Glasgow connections, but I think if we perhaps talk about these after and just sort of go
certainly. Yeah.
Let's play away.
Another pair of cracking tracks there, Tony.
Yeah, the first one was Purify by Thrum, who were a Glasgow band from the 1990s. Both those tracks are actually tracks I discovered through listening to Mark Radcliffe on first Radio 2 and then Radio 6. And Thrum were just really heavily radio played. They did an evening session, all sorts of stuff. And then they kind of split up, and they've sort of got back together since. But nobody really remembers them outside Glasgow.
Right.
I mean, Monica Queen's still very popular outside Glasgow. Probably best known for doing the female vocals on Belle and Sebastian's Lazy Line Paid to Jane.
Oh, right.
And that one I want to dedicate to Alison Fairchild, who's a big fan of Thrum and I think sort of knows some of the members from her time up in Glasgow. And the second one was a track by a Norwegian band called I Was a King. And the track's called Norman Blake, but it's spelt Bleik. And it's obvious that it's their tribute to Teenage Fanclub. It's a very Teenage Fanclub, and the title name, misspelling that surname, is their tribute to what Teenage Fanclub do with their song Neil Young, where they spell Young Jung.
Yeah.
And actually, I just found out right now that I Was a King and Norman Blake have now teamed up to do an album together, and I think that sounds wonderful. And that track I want to dedicate to Adela Terrell, both because she's a huge Teenage Fanclub fan from having come up from Glasgow, but also because she spent a lot of time in Norway and speaks Norwegian very well.
Yes. I haven't actually heard her speak Norwegian yet. I'll have to ask her something that would lead on to that.
I'm sure she'd be very happy to do so.
Yeah. And up to the next track. Now, unfortunately, the one that you did want me to play, I couldn't find. I will have to have a word with the researcher of this programme next time I look in the mirror. But I did manage to find one track.
For some reason, it's very difficult to get hold of a lot of tracks by this band. It's a band called Scarce, who did this album Dead Sexy in 1995. And it's a brilliant... I mean, I wanted to do Honey Simple, which is the opening track, which is just a brilliant opening track, but the album is actually chock full of good songs that you keep wanting to go. And this All Sideways, one of their singles, is as good as the rest of the stuff.
It's getting another band caught up in tragedy, though, isn't it?
Yeah, the lead singer Chick Graining had a brain aneurysm, very nearly died. You know, he only survived, I think, because the other members of the band found him, and that really just sort of knocked their career over. They tried going back out on tour when he was well enough, but he wasn't really well enough, and it just took all the momentum out of there. But I'd like to dedicate this one to my mate Ross Cohen, who I haven't seen in about 15 years or so, or something like that. But I introduced him to Scarce, to Dead Sexy, and he was very, very grateful at the time.
Brilliant.
It's the sky, so high. It's the sky.
Yeah, that was Scarce and All Sideways. Another cracking one there. And the comment you've put for the next track that we're coming to, Tony, is just why does no one remember this album anymore?
Yeah, because this is from Strawberries, which is the 5th album by The Damned. And everybody talks about, Damned, Damned, or Machine Gun Etiquette, or sometimes about the Black Album and all of that stuff. Nobody ever seems to talk about Strawberries, and yet it's a fantastic record. It's really musically sophisticated. They bring in lots of keyboards, lots of other instruments, and I can kind of see why Captain Sensible left The Damned after doing this album, because he must have just thought, "Oh, we've done it.
Yeah.
We can't do anything more." It's no point.
Of course, he does that weird last track, doesn't he? He kind of messes about.
There's some stuff in there that's sort of what Sensible's been doing in his solo stuff. And I think you're right there. You were saying, well, the previous record was saying, is it that there's no big hit single off it? And I think that might be, but certainly not putting this out as a hit single, this particular track out as a single, was a huge mistake. that song I would like to dedicate to my wife, Kate. Our record collections don't have an awful lot in common with each other, but The Damned is one of the things where we've got...
You've got a crossover there, yeah.
There's a bit of a crossover there because she is a massive goth chick, basically.
Right, okay, great, yeah. Unfortunately, when me and Ali moved in together, we found we had too many that were the same. It's the opposite thing. But, yeah, that was great. And like you say, don't know why that never came out as a single. Really. It's just... and I like, as well as you, I love the keyboard at the end there. Yeah. Just amazing. Anyway, we're coming up to the last track, so I will do my usual spill, which is basically thanks to the sharers and carers, and thanks to Tony, of course, coming in. Absolutely brilliant. I really enjoyed it.
I had a great time.
Yes. I think what I shall do in the future is I will actually get some sharers and carers badges made up. There'll be a cross between the Blue Peter badge and Wogan's Old Gits, or whatever they were called. We can have a special gold one for people who come in. So there you go. That's my task. But anyway... So tell us about the last track you've got here.
Yeah, the last track is a song called Love Us All. And it's from an album that Deep Purple's bass player Roger Glover put together as a sort of concept album. It's based on a children's novel, I think.
Right. Yeah.
Butterfly Ball and the Grasshopper's Feast, and he just got all his mates together and he made this album. And this is the last track off the album, a song called Love Is All that sort of finishes up. It was meant that there was going to be a whole film of the album.
Right, yeah.
And it would be an animated film, but in fact, they only ever got as far as doing the animation for this track.
Yeah.
Love Is All. And people of a certain age will almost certainly remember this.
Absolutely, yeah, this was it. I was listening to this before we came in, and I was like, hang on, I know this. Wait a minute, there's a cartoon. And yeah. That was I was really chuffed, but it's not just the cartoon that's a surprise. There's the friend that's singing this.
The lead singer of this, and it's Ronnie James Dio, and you would never realise that this was Ronnie James Dio because it does not sound like anything else you have ever heard Ronnie James Dio do.
Especially when you see it's a frog singing in the thing. But yeah, we'll leave off with this, and thank you very much, Tony. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely pleasure myself.
Everybody's got to live together. All the people got to understand. So love your neighbor like you love your brother. Come on and join the band. Well, all you need is love and understanding.
Okay, that was the last song. You can fast forward and turn over the tape now.
Radio Lewis. Local webcasting for a worldwide audience.